Dusk settled over Savannah, Georgia, painting the sky a bruised purple as J.D. Vance maneuvered his rental car down a narrow street lined with sprawling oaks, their branches heavy with Spanish moss. The day had been brutal. Hours of meetings in Atlanta, endless handshakes with people who'd never walked a mile in his shoes, and dodging gotcha questions from reporters with agendas. His tie felt like a noose. All he wanted was a plate of something hot and a moment to think. He spotted Wheeler's Kitchen near Forsyth Park, a squat brick joint with fogged-up windows and a neon sign buzzing faintly. The gravel lot crunched under his tires as he parked, the air thick with the smell of frying chicken and melted butter. He killed the engine, leaned back, and let out a slow breath. This was it, a slice of real life. The door creaked open, and a brass bell jingled overhead. Inside, Wheeler's Kitchen buzzed with a quiet warmth. Worn wooden floors groaned under his weight, and checkered tablecloths draped over wobbly tables. The walls were a patchwork of old photos, smiling families, kids with sticky fingers, grizzled locals clinking mason jars. A jukebox hummed a mournful country tune in the corner, all steel guitars and lost love. J.D. shrugged off his jacket, the scent of Cajun spices and cornbread hitting him like a wave. His stomach growled. He caught a few glances, nothing unusual for a stranger in a place this tight-knit. "Evening," he said, nodding toward the counter. "Got a spot for one?" Lila Brooks, a young server with a high ponytail and tired eyes, froze mid-motion, her rag dangling over a ketchup stain. She stared at him, her face shifting, recognition flashing like a warning light. Her smile dropped. J.D. clocked it instantly, a knot forming in his gut, but he kept his cool. "Long day," he added, forcing a half-smile. Lila blinked, her mouth opening, then snapping shut. Just a sec," she stammered, her voice shaky. She tossed the rag down and bolted through the swinging kitchen doors, leaving J.D. stranded. He shoved his hands in his pockets, rocking back on his heels. Odd, but he'd seen worse. The room turned on him fast. Trey Sullivan, a loudmouth in a Braves cap, leaned across his table, muttering to his buddy with a smirk. The buddy snickered, shooting J.D. a look, sharp, sizing him up like prey. Over by the window, a woman in a floral blouse slammed her sweet tea down, the glass rattling, her lips a thin line. Roy Carter, an old-timer in a faded work jacket, paused mid-bite, his fork hovering over a pile of greens, his weathered face hardening. J.D. felt it, the air thickening, the stairs piling up. He'd walked into plenty of rooms where he wasn't wanted, but this? A roadside joint in Savannah? "Everything all right back there?" he called, loud enough to carry, his tone steady but edged. The kitchen door swung wide, and Lila stumbled out, her cheeks pink, avoiding his gaze. "Sir, She stopped cold as Hank Wheeler stepped up behind her. Big, broad-shouldered, with a grease-smeared apron and a stare that could crack concrete. "We're not serving you tonight, Mr. Vance," Hank said, his drawl low and final. No room for debate. The jukebox clicked to a new track, but the room swallowed the sound. J.D. tilted his head, letting it sink in. "Come again," he said, voice calm, but his eyes narrowed. Hank didn't budge. "You heard me. Not here. Not tonight." A beat passed, heavy as lead. Then Ellen Hayes emerged from behind the counter. Hank's wife, the soul of this place. Her gray hair was pulled tight, her face carved with years of hard choices. "It's not just tonight," she said, her voice cutting through the hush like a blade. "It's you. We don't need what you bring here." J.D.'s chest tightened. Every eye was on him now. Trait grinning like a jackal, Roy watching with quiet steel, the woman clutching her glass like a lifeline. He could leave, storm out, let the door slam and call it done. But something burned in him, anger, sure, but also a stubborn need to know. He locked eyes with Ellen, unflinching. "And what exactly did I bring? 'Cause I walked in here for a meal, not a war." Trey barked a laugh, loud and jagged. "Too late, big shot," he hollered, slapping the table. Ellen didn't flinch. Hank shifted, uneasy but solid. Lila twisted her apron, trapped in the crossfire. The bell's faint echo lingered, a ghost of his entrance, and J.D. knew. This wasn't ending quietly. The hush in Wheeler's kitchen stretched thin, ready to break. J.D. Vance stood firm on the creaky wooden floor, his boots scuffing as he shifted. Hank Wheeler's words, "We're not serving you tonight," Mr. Vance still echoed, and Ellen Hayes' jab, "We don't need what you bring," hit like a slap. The air turned heavy, sticky with tension, the kind that Savannah summers bred. The jukebox whined a faint fiddle tune, but it was drowned by the silence. Eyes drilled into J.D. Trey Sullivan's smirk cutting deep, Roy Carter's gaze cold and steady, Lila Brooks nervous, fidgeting a soft rhythm behind the counter. His jaw clenched tight, a pulse throbbing in his temple. This wasn't just a no. This was war. He took a slow breath, voice low and even. "You're going to have to spell it out. What do I bring besides hunger?" Ellen stepped forward, her apron dusted with cornmeal, eyes burning. "Promises," she snapped, sharp and fierce. "Empty ones. You roll in, talk big, then leave us with nothing. We know your kind." Her words stung, and J.D. felt the room lean closer, waiting. Trey jumped in, his laugh jagged. "Yeah, man. All suits and hot air. What are you doing in Savannah?" "Fishing for votes." His buddy snickered, but J.D. kept his eyes on Ellen. She stood solid, arms crossed. Hank loomed beside her, uncertain but unyielding. "Look," Hank said, drawl slow. "We're a family joint. No trouble." "That's it." J.D.'s brow lifted, edged. "Trouble? I came for chicken, not a fight." Marla, the woman with the sweet tea, spoke up, voice shaky but firm. "It's not the chicken, mister. It's what you stand for. Folks here don't buy it." Roy nodded, fork clinking down. "Been burned too much," he rasped. "Politicians come, talk, then gone. Nothing changes." J.D. met his stare. "I've lived that, Roy. But you don't know me." Ellen laughed, short and bitter. "We know plenty. TV shows your type. Slick suits, slicker lies. Savannah's ours, not yours to fix." Heat crept up J.D.'s neck. He heard the kitchen, grease popping, but out here it was still. Lila twisted her apron, glancing at Hank. Trey grinned wide. "She's got you, Vance. Why not just leave?" J.D.'s pulse hammered, but he held it in. He'd faced worse. Angry crowds, trap questions, but this cut deeper. They'd judged him before he spoke. He locked on Hank, ignoring Trey. "So that's it? No reason, just get out?" Hank rubbed his neck, grease smearing. "No trouble. That's the rule." J.D. stepped up, voice steady. "I'm not breaking anything. You're the ones drawing lines." Ellen's face turned stone. "We drew M for a reason. You don't get it. This is our home, not your stage." Her voice cracked raw. J.D. caught it, pain buried deep. He started to reply, but Trey cut in loud. "Oh, please. He thinks he's folks now. Hilarious." Marla shook her head, muttering. Roy watched, silent. J.D.'s hands tightened. Their anger, their distrust, it pressed in, heavy as brick. He'd seen it in Ohio, towns left to rot, but here it was personal. He faced Ellen and Hank. "You're right, I don't own this place. Never said I did. But I'm no villain either. You're kicking me out without a chance." His voice rose, firm. "Tell me, what's the real issue?" Hank wavered, jaw tight. Ellen didn't blink. "You," she said, each word a blow. "You don't stay. You take, you leave. We're done with it." The room pulsed, nods, murmurs. Trey clapped slow. "Send him packing, Ellen." Lila flinched, eyes on the door. J.D. didn't budge. He could walk out, let Trey win, let Ellen stand tall. But he stayed, voice calm hard. "If that's it, fine. But I deserve why. Face me. Tell me why I'm the bad guy." Hank's fists clenched. Ellen's stare dared him. Trey's smirk slipped. Roy leaned in. Lila held her breath. The jukebox faded, and J.D. waited, the fight just beginning. The tension in Wheeler's kitchen crackled like static before a storm. J.D. Vance stood his ground, the weight of Ellen Hayes' words, "You're the problem," and Hank Wheeler's clenched fists pressing against him. The room pulsed with raw energy. Trey Sullivan's slow clap fading into a smirk. Roy Carter's steady gaze cutting through the haze. Lila Brooks' shallow breaths, a faint echo behind the counter. J.D.'s heart thudded, but his face stayed stone. He demanded an answer, why he was the enemy, and the air hung heavy, waiting to explode. The jukebox stuttered to a new song, a mournful twang that nobody heard. He locked eyes with Hank, voice low, unyielding. "You gonna tell me? Or just stand there?" Hank's jaw flexed, his big hands uncurling slow. He glanced at Ellen, her stare daring him to hold the line. "Ain't much to say," he muttered, drawl thick. "You heard her. We don't want the mess you bring." JD tilted his head sharp. "Mess? I'm one guy. You're acting like I rolled in with an army." Trey barked a laugh from his table, loud and brassy. "Might as well have, man. You're a walking headline, trouble in a suit." His buddy grinned, nodding, but JD didn't bite. He kept his focus on Ellen, her gray bun tight, her posture rigid. "That it?" he asked her. "You think I'm here to wreck your world?" Ellen's eyes flashed, fierce and wounded. "You don't wreck it yourself. You just talk, and folks believe you. Then nothing changes. We're left holding the bag." Her voice shook just a crack, and JD caught it, years of hurt spilling out. He could feel the room shift, their stares sharpening. Marla clutched her sweet tea, muttering, "Same old story." Roy leaned forward, elbows on the counter, his voice gravelly. 40 years at the shipyard. Watched it die. Watch him promise jobs. Nothing. You any different? JD met Roy's eyes. Steady. "I've seen it too, Roy. Grew up in it. Towns gutted, people forgotten. I'm not here to sell you fairy tales." Ellen scoffed, cutting in. "Then why re you here? Campaign stop? Photo op." Her words slashed, and Trey piled on, smirking. "Yeah, Vance. Where's the camera crew?" The room buzzed, murmurs, a few nods. Lila flinched, her apron twisted tight in her hands, glancing nervously at Hank. JD's chest burned, but he didn't flinch. He'd faced mobs, cameras, insults. This was deeper, a knife twist of distrust. He stepped closer to Hank, voice steady, loud enough for all to hear. "No cameras. No speech. Just me. And I'm not leaving till I get why you're shutting me out." The words landed hard, a challenge. Hank blinked, caught off guard. Trey's smirk froze. "What?" he sputtered, leaning forward. "You serious, man?" That's when JD did it. He pulled a chair from the nearest table, the legs scraping loud against the floor, and sat down. Slow, deliberate, like he owned the damn place. The room gasped, a collective intake of breath. Lila's eyes widened, her hands dropping. Marla's glass clinked hard against the table. Roy's bushy brows shot up, a flicker of surprise breaking his stone face. Trey laughed, short and stunned. "Oh, this guy's got guts." JD rested his elbows on the table, calm as steel. "You don't want me here? Fine, but I'm not running off till we talk this out. Face to face." He looked at Hank, then Ellen. "You got me pegged as the bad guy. Prove it. Tell me why." The air tightened, every sound. Lila's shaky exhale, the kitchen's faint sizzle, amplified. Hank rubbed his neck, thrown off. Ellen's lips parted, but no words came. Then a new voice cut through, soft but firm, from a corner booth. "Give him a chance, Hank." It was Clara Newton, gray hair loose, glasses perched low, a retired teacher with a voice that carried weight. She set her fork down, her plate of cornbread untouched, and looked straight at JD. "This is Savannah. We don't just kick folks out. We hear him first." Her words hung there, a lifeline in the storm. Hank turned, startled. Ellen's eyes narrowed, but she didn't snap back. Trey rolled his eyes. "Oh, come on, Miss Clara. He's a politician." Clara didn't flinch. "And you're a loudmouth, Trey Sullivan, but I still let you talk." A few chuckles rippled, nervous, quick. Roy's mouth twitched, almost a smile. JD seized it, leaning forward. "She's right. You want to hate me? Hate me after I've said my piece. But I'm staying." He tapped the table, firm. "So what's it gonna be?" Hank exhaled hard, his big frame slumping just a hair. He glanced at Ellen, then back at JD, caught between them. "You're a stubborn bastard," he muttered, voice low. Ellen crossed her arms tighter, glaring. "Doesn't change a thing." Trey snorted, leaning back. "This ought to be good." Lila hovered, frozen, her eyes darting between them all. Clara watched, calm and steady, her presence a quiet anchor. JD didn't move, his stare locked on Hank. "I've got time," he said, voice smooth, daring. "Ball's in your court." The room held its breath, the jukebox whining on, and every soul in Wheeler's kitchen knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The air in Wheeler's kitchen trembled, thick with the weight of J.D. Vance's defiance. He sat at the table, chairs scraped back, elbows planted firm, his gaze locked on Hank Wheeler like a dare carved in stone. "I've got time," he'd said, and the words hung there, a gauntlet thrown down. Hank stood frozen, his big hands twitching, caught between Ellen Hayes' unyielding stare and J.D.'s steady calm. The jukebox whined a lonesome chord, barely audible over the pounding silence. Trey Sullivan's smirk flickered, unsure now, while Roy Carter's steely eyes narrowed, weighing every move. Lila Brooks clutched the counter, her knuckles white, and Clara Newton sat poised in her booth, her quiet strength a tether in the chaos. This was it, the breaking point, and every soul in the room felt it. Hank exhaled hard, his voice rough. "You don't quit, do you?" J.D. leaned forward, slow, deliberate. "Not when I'm in the dark. You want to shut me out? Tell me why. Right here, right now." Ellen stepped up, her apron rustling, her face a mask of fire and ice. "Why?" "Because you're a ghost, Vance. You breeze through places like this, promising the moon, then vanish. We're the ones left behind, always." Her voice cracked, raw with years of scars, and J.D. felt it hit, deep, personal, a wound he knew too well. Trey snorted, leaning back with a grin. "She's right, man. You're all talk, big shot senator playing small-town hero. Where were you when we needed real help?" His words jabbed, but J.D. kept his eyes on Ellen. "I was a kid in Ohio," he said, voice low, steady. "Watching my town die, mills closing, jobs gone, folks like my mom drowning in it. I didn't grow up in a suit. I grew up in that." He tapped the table, firm, the sound sharp in the stillness. Ellen's lips tightened, but she didn't fire back. Not yet. Roy Carter shifted, his chair creaking as he leaned in. 40 years at the shipyard, he rasped, voice worn like old leather. Saw it shut down. Saw families pack up, leave nothing behind. Politicians came, smiled, promised. Nothing. You saying you're not that guy? His eyes bored into J.D., heavy with decades of betrayal. J.D. met them, unflinching. "I'm saying I know what it's like to be left, Roy. Watch my own people fade, drugs, debt, despair. I climbed out, yeah, but I didn't forget." Ellen's laugh was brittle, cutting. "Climbed out? Good for you. What about us? You think sitting here makes you one of us?" Her hands balled into fists, trembling. J.D. held her gaze. "I'm not pretending to be you. I'm asking you to see me. Not the TV version, not the headlines. Me." His voice rose, steady but fierce. "I've lived the empty promises, too. That's why I'm here. 'Cause I hate him as much as you do." The room stirred. Marla's glass clinked as she set it down, her breath shaky. Trey's smirk faded, his arms crossing tight. Lila's eyes darted to Hank, pleading silently. Clara spoke up, her tone calm, cutting through. "He's got a point, Ellen. You're mad at a shadow. Let him talk. See if there's meat on those bones." Ellen whipped around, glaring. "Clara, this ain't your classroom. He's not some kid with a story to tell." Clara didn't blink. "Maybe not. But I taught enough to know you don't judge till you listen." Hank rubbed his face, grease smearing, his voice rumbling low. "You're digging a hole, Vance. What's the play here? Prove us wrong? Win us over?" J.D. leaned back, arms resting loose. "No play. Just truth. You think I don't get it? The distrust, the anger? I do. Grew up with it. But I'm not your punching bag either. Ask me something real. Test me." His words landed like a spark, igniting the room. Roy tilted his head, curious. "All right. What did you do when your folks got left behind? You just climb out? Leave him?" J.D. paused, the question sinking in. He saw it. His mom's trembling hands, the trailer's peeling walls, the hollow eyes of neighbors. "I fought," he said, voice thick. "Got out. Yeah, school, work, claw my way up. But I sent money back. Checked in. Pulled others up when I could. Wasn't perfect, still isn't. But I didn't turn my back." His eyes flicked to Ellen. "That sound like a ghost to you?" Ellen faltered, just a second, her fists loosening. Hank's shoulders slumped, his stare softening. Trey shifted, uneasy, muttering, still sounds like a politician to me. But his voice lacked bite. Marlo whispered, maybe, and trailed off. Clara nodded, slow, a faint smile tugging her lips. That's a start, JD. Keep going. The air shifted, still tense but cracking like ice underweight. JD pressed on, voice rising raw. You want to know why I'm here? Not votes. Not cameras. I'm tired of the game, tired of the divide. I walked in for a meal, yeah, but I'm staying 'cause I see you. And I'm damn well asking you to see me back. His fist hit the table, a dull thud, and the room jumped. Lila gasped soft. Roy's eyes widened, a spark of something, respect, maybe flickering there. Hank stared, long and hard, then sighed deep. You're a piece of work, Vance. He glanced at Ellen, her face a war of doubt and steel. She shook her head, voice quieter now. Words don't fix nothing. You know that. JD nodded, slow. I do, but they're where it starts. So what now? Trey chuckled low. Man's got nerve, I'll give him that. Marla looked away, conflicted. Clara watched, steady. Hank rubbed his neck again, then dropped into the chair across from JD, the wood groaning under him. All right, he said, voice gruff. You're here. Talk, but don't expect me to roll over. Ellen stiffened, but didn't stop him. Lila exhaled, shaky. Roy leaned back, waiting. The jukebox clicked off, and the silence roared. Every eye on the two men at the table, the fight shifting into something new, something no one could look away from. The hush in Wheeler's kitchen softened, a delicate calm washing over the room as Hank Wheeler sat across from J.D. Vance, the chair groaning under him. The jukebox rested silent, leaving only the kitchen's hum, grease sizzling, a spoon tapping a pan. J.D.'s hands lay loose on the table, his gaze steady on Hank, who wiped his grease-smeared face with a heavy sigh. Ellen Hayes stood rigid, arms crossed tight, her eyes flickering with doubt and steel. Trey Sullivan slumped in his seat, his smirk dulled to a squint, while Roy Carter watched from the counter, hand still on his mug. Lila Brooks lingered near, apron twisted in her grip, and Clara Newton nodded faintly from her booth, her calm a steady thread. The air shifted, not broken, but breathing, alive with a fragile chance. Hank leaned forward, voice gruff. You've talked plenty, Vance. What's it worth? JD met his stare, unflinching. Shows I'm not here to burn you. I know this anger. I've carried it too. Ellen cut in sharp. Don't act like you're one of us. Sitting there don't make it true. JD turned to her, slow. Never claimed that. Just want you to see me, not the headlines me. Her fists eased, just a touch, her breath catching. Roy's rasp broke through, low and worn. Words are cheap, son. What did you do when your people got left? JD nodded, voice steady. Clawed my way up, school work. Sent money back, pulled some with me. Not perfect, but real. Roy's lip twitched, a grudging nod. Maybe. Still smells like a politician. Trey chuckled, soft. Yeah, big heart till the votes dry up. His jab hung weak, half-hearted. Clara spoke, firm yet gentle. He stayed, Hank. More than most. Give him a chance, one plate. Hank glanced at Ellen, her face a storm of hesitation. She shook her head, quiet. I don't trust him. JD leaned back, calm. Don't need to. Just let me eat. Prove I'm not the devil. Hank stared, then barked a short laugh, rough. Stubborn as hell, ain't you? He stood, turning to Lila. Get him a menu. Let's see if he lasts. Lila scurried off, returning with a menu and a plate. Fried chicken, golden and hot. Cornbread steaming beside greens. She set it down, shy. It's good, she mumbled. JD took a bite, spice hitting his tongue, and grinned at Hank. Worth the fight. Hank snorted, almost warm. Don't get cozy. Ellen watched, silent, her eyes questioning now. Roy sipped his coffee, slow. Ain't a bad start, Vance. The room stirred. Forks clinked soft. Voices murmured low. JD ate, savoring it, then looked up. Ever had to stay where you weren't wanted? Tell me about it. His voice hung real, inviting, and Wheeler's kitchen felt alive. Not healed, but open, just enough to linger.